Ladies and gentlemen of the hoop world, welcome back. You're in the zone. Rich Sutter, Pete Coles, and we've got a very, very super pumped special guest for you today, folks. Mr. Jay Burnham from UMass, the voice of UMass athletics. Jay, you're in the zone, baby. How's it feel?
I am in the zone with you, Rich. Man, thanks for having me. How you doing?
Awesome. Awesome. Weather's improving. That makes my mood improve. Everything's good. Everything's good. How about you?
Yeah, no complaints. I'm coming at you from the what I call the podcast emporium here inside the Mullins Center, which is a building I get to come to each and every day for work. And I actually just got done talking with our head basketball coach on the women's side, Coach Mike Leffler, who's done a tremendous job with our women's basketball program here. They're coming off a 23-win season. So diving into that and all the changing elements of college athletics.
Well, we're going to touch on some of that today. So that really leads into my first question, which is Shelburne Falls, right up the block from UMass.
Right.
And so you're sitting in either McGurk or you're in the Mullins Center, first time behind the mic, being the voice of UMass athletics. What was that like?
Yeah, man. So, I'm not sure how much you know about my background outside of just growing up in Shelburne, but when I was 17 years old, I said, I got to get the heck out of here, man. So I went to college at Hawaii Pacific University in Honolulu.
Nice.
I went about as far as you possibly can go. And then a long journey of getting into broadcasting, learning the business, honing a craft, and then having an opportunity for this job to open up about 6 or 7 years ago. So actually my first game was back here in the Mullins Center during basketball season. And it was great, man. I mean, think about the scope of our jobs. I think coaching's pretty similar where you have to go where the job is. There's not a lot of places where you can be a head coach, right? And so if the head coach is Sacramento State, you have to go be in Sacramento State. So being real fortuitous to have not only one of only a handful of, flagship program jobs open up as a lead voice and to be right in my backyard was truly amazing. So, mom gets to come to all the games. I just played bingo with grandma last night. So after being away for so long as a young man, coming back and being able to celebrate, UMass athletics with my family has truly been an honor.
Doing all that we do in the presence of family certainly is an honor. The voice of the flagship, that's amazing. So how did you get into this? What really brought you to it?
Yeah, so, I kind of told a story about my broadcasting interests. Growing up with my father was always listening to the Red Sox on the radio, and he had a little printed out sign on his transistor radio that said for Red Sox games only. And then as I got into college, I was listening to a lot of games when I was going to school in Hawaii because of the 6-hour time difference. So I could listen to a Red Sox game, at 1:00 in the afternoon while I was studying or coming back from class. And then that's when I decided that I think, hey man, that'd be a really cool thing to do. Let me get involved in figuring out how to, broadcast games for a living. So I transferred to Elon University in North Carolina, which had a pretty good broadcasting element to their curriculum. And I remember I went to the career counselor and I said, hey, I want to broadcast baseball games. And they had no idea how to make that happen. So I emailed every single minor league baseball team that I could think of. And one of them got back to me. That was Hagerstown, Maryland. And so I went to be an unpaid intern for the Hagerstown Suns, which back then they were single-A San Francisco Giants team. And then I worked my way onto the radio from the concession stand into the broadcast booth, and was able to kind of navigate those waters to get to catch on in the minor league baseball world. So, it's been it's a lot different than when I started for sure too, because everything's streamed. This is video, obviously. Back in the day, it was hard to get video, and now everything is video. So, really listening to games as a kid and making that connection when I got to school is ultimately kind of how I got into the business.
What a great answer. And it reminds me of that quote, everybody wants what I got, but nobody wants to do what I had to do to get it.
Yeah,
All
I
those
relate it.
days working in those spots where,
I mean, Coach Frank Martin here, our basketball coach, and I talk to a lot of coaches about players, and they say something similar. Everyone wants to have success, and they don't want to put the work in. And I talk to a lot of kids that are interested in getting into broadcasting, and I say, hey, here's an opportunity. You can go be an intern in Peoria or go somewhere in Batavia and start in the New York Penn League. And a lot of kids today will be like, I'm good. I don't need to do that. And maybe the world is different, so you don't have to kind of spend so many years working your way up. But there was definitely a lot of layers that I like to consider. Unpaid internships, pulling tarp, working in the concession stands, selling tickets, selling sponsorship, and all those things have kind of like made me who I am and understanding the general overview of athletics from the ground up.
That's great. And this is a question that has been on my mind for a while because, as full disclosure, Jay allowed me to work. I was honored to work with the UMass program this year to do some radio and to do some television. And one of the great joys of my life, still to this day, it really was a great, great time. But what I wanted to really ask you was because in working with the basketball operation over on that side, I noticed that you have hockey, you have baseball, you have, numerous different sports. And I guess from my perspective and doing this show for a while, how do you work your cadence from doing something that's a little slower, like a baseball game where you don't have to really be on top of it every minute, to like hockey, which can go like, crazy, frenetic at different times? How do you work on that? How do you get that done?
Well, first of all, thanks for stepping in and bringing your passion for basketball here to UMass. We really had a lot of fun with you on the broadcast. It's great because the last couple of years I've worked in more and more hockey. And obviously the Mullen Center here is the home for hockey and basketball. So it's hard to kind of do everything as well as football when that season crosses over. So it's a very busy time of year. The best of the best, you see them on ESPN and the national broadcast. I mean, they can slide in and do basketball and then do a hockey game, playoff hockey game with a lot of intensity. I always am questioning, especially with the hockey world, because I think that is the hardest sport to broadcast. It's so fast. There's so many guys hopping on and off the ice. Things just continually change. That's been the biggest challenge for me, is learning, how to call that sport. And so I constantly second guess myself. Am I going too fast? Am I giving this too much energy? But you're doing the right thing when the moment takes you into a great call, especially here with the crowds that we have. There's definitely another level of atmosphere on the hockey side, but there is a cadence, as you said. That I think that's the right word. It's changed in baseball because now there's a clock, so you used to have to really come up with stories and things to fill, and now the action is a lot more smooth and quicker. But there is definitely a different component in terms of if you're doing a game on TV versus radio. So I think you just got to downshift sometimes in your head. And if it's a football game, if the score is out of hand, there's a different level of intensity that you bring to a call than for, say, in the fourth quarter. And that's one of the things I try to tell young broadcasters is, first inning of a baseball game, this isn't game 7 of the World Series. There has to be some level of a crescendo to get to the point of the 8th or 9th inning with a game on the line. So you have to be able to have, I guess, different meters in your head. Hey, this is a 7 moment. Let me save a little extra for when it's a 9 or an overtime hockey goal, which would be a 10 or 11.
Hey, Jay, I have a question. How hard is it? How hard is it to set the mood coming in on a radio broadcast and is to set the mood on a TV broadcast?
Yeah, and I actually think this line is diminishing because there's a generation now, maybe 2, that have grown up with everything just being streamed, right? I don't think there's a lot of the younger generation that solely listens to a radio broadcast. So the old timers would tell you, there's definitely a significant difference because the pregame show in TV, really, if you watch an ESPN broadcast, even our broadcast here, ESPN Plus, It's 2 minutes to set the scene. It's player to watch. Boom, let's get into the game. And then for, radio, there's a lot of buildup. If you do a college football broadcast at a power school, they're doing 5 hours of pregame, to set the stage. So I do think you have more time to storytell on the radio side, which will for me always be the more pure medium. But I think for TV, it's just more like, you just gotta get into it and show the game.
We just had the voice of the PA voice of the Thunderbirds just walk by us because he's the media teacher here, and we're trying to tell the kids that every time. It's like they did high school hockey for the first time ever this year,
nice.
And they found out how hard it was just to get a game on the air, first of all, and then second of all tell the story. And we have really one good announcer here, and he's in demand. Like he's in demand.
Yeah.
He's a high school kid.
Yeah, and like, too, just getting it off the ground. I mean, so let's rewind, right? 15 years ago, we start to have, phones in our hands, and you can kind of start streaming everything. And then a lot of colleges say, hey, we can stream all of our events, Well, okay, that takes, despite the fact that the technology has improved significantly, it still takes a lot to get it off the ground, to do the graphics correctly, to do audio correctly, to produce it, to get it out. And so I will say, especially a lot of the smaller schools, I think our crew does an amazing job here, one of the best in the Mid-American Conference, but it's a staff of one full-time guy, know, and a lot of students. And I think when you see clips cut and shared on social media that people start dunking on whatever school maybe did something wrong or had a graphic misspelled, you're not realizing that, there's so much effort that goes into doing that. And by the way, that crew might have to turn around and do a softball game later that day, and then, 2 events on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. And we have 21 sports here, and they never stop. So there's so much that goes into it these days. And I think a lot of the people behind the scenes certainly deserve a ton of credit.
I asked Pete to split us and join us today into a 3-part screen because Pete's got great knowledge of this business as well, and he's been shaking his head the whole time you've been speaking. He's been nodding in agreement with you, especially the part about trying to find people to do stuff and to work. I said, but the other piece of it was, too, for me is because I like to push Pete's buttons a little bit, too. We've never had a 3-screen split. And I was like, Pete, you sure you can do that? You sure we can handle that? And so Pete's pushing his buttons today and making it work, and just ran in the door about a minute ago.
Well, Jay,
so
we were talking about a turnaround. So we had the aviation graduation that we set up for in a hangar at 7:30 this morning with our production truck. The kids busted their butt and got it torn down in 20 minutes, and I came back here and we were only 10 minutes late. So, because that went way over.
That's a pretty good lead into my next question, though, because Jay, you've been described as somebody who has the capability to make lemonade out of lemons, and I guess that was a reference to you're in a blowout. Your home team's not doing real well, but you still want to keep people interested, and you want to keep a pretty good face on it without sounding like you're really over the top and, just doing it, performatively, which people would pick up on. How do you handle the lemonade, brother?
Yeah, so especially in reference to some of the issues we've had, UMass football-wise, which the grass is greener. It's coming this season. That's certainly
I agree.
a big hope. But it is hard. I think it depends. There's places that won't let you make lemonade or won't make you eat the lemons, right? You have to be a paid mouthpiece, or ownership will come down and fire you if you say something negative. Fortunately, here they do give me the freedom to connect with the fans, to know that, like, hey man, I'm going through the same thing that you are, because, I grew up in Western Massachusetts. I grew up in the heyday of UMass. I want everything here to be great. And it hurts when, especially, a game's out of hand. So it did help for a while. We have a great color guy, Pete Brock, who played a decade plus in the NFL, was my color analyst here for radio up until the last couple of the seasons. He's always good for a squish the fish story for the Patriots and Dolphins when things get out of hand. But I think there's a way that you can be, and I'm very rarely or if ever negative. There's a way that you can be truthful without being mean. And I take that into consideration, especially when it comes to college athletics, where these are still student athletes. I know there's money coming in, but they're still student athletes at the core, and they represent your university. They chose to come here, many of them from, places unknown or at least outside of New England. And so they're trying their best, man. And I think you have to keep that in perspective. And then also you have to have lived experiences. And I think that's where it comes in where, I went to college in Hawaii. I also did a semester in Japan. I did 3 years in Pensacola, Florida. I spent 2 years in Asheville, North Carolina. I spent 3 years in Trenton, New Jersey. I spent 6 years in Richmond, Virginia. I think there's something to be said about not being a boring person that allows you to be a non-boring broadcaster. A lot of guys now, if Harry Callis was coming out of college, he probably wouldn't get a demo tape through the first round of interviews because he doesn't have that, crisp network voice that is procured these days by kids, starting at 15, 16, 17, getting into college, places like, some of the best, Syracuse, Fordham. So, having a little bit of character, I think certainly helps in situations like that.
When I first came up to UMass and I was approaching in the job, and I'm a pretty good researcher. I got myself pretty good and ready. But before I went on there, it was kind of to echo the little bit of the sentiment that you had. Before I put that headset on, I said to myself, remember now, everybody's grandmother is listening to you. Everybody's grandma is on the other end of this line, and they don't want to hear you trash their family.
Yeah, and I would say too, like especially someone in your position in an analyst role, where ball. I mean, you're the head basketball coach, for crying out loud. I think a lot of people, especially when they start, get really hung up on numbers, stats, information, where really what would be more impressive and things that you want to hear are how you can relate your basketball experience to what's happening on the floor, as opposed to what statistical metric might look best for whatever player. And that's what I tell analysts. I'm not sure. I hope I conveyed this to you, is that, use your experience as a guiding force for broadcasting this game because you're the expert.
Well, I appreciate that. I wanted to just touch on this, and then I'm going to let Pete jump in for a question. But this is something Pete and I talk about all the time, and it's in the realm of basketball. It's in the realm of what we do in terms of coaching and in that, the inside of the sport. But then I took this same thing and I extrapolated it out to what you do. And the whole thing that Pete and I talk about is chemistry. And how do you keep good chemistry on teams with the NIL, the portal, all the crazy stuff going on? How do you keep good chemistry on an NBA team where the salaries are crazy and you can get traded one day and you have a locker room next to this guy and the next day somebody else is in that locker? So you have some of that, but you have I thought you did something really astute and almost genius when you brought in two Westfield State guys, Frank Sullivan and Rich Sutter. I thought that was something that took you over the top a little bit. But
we brought in another one, too. Evan Morehouse is going to join us on the hockey.
I know Evan really well. He's great.
Yeah, awesome. So, those are the sage, wise decisions that you made that have just really set the thing. But, I mean, Frank Sullivan, I worked with Adam Frenier, who lives in Westfield, and, I mean, wow, what a pro. That's what I was really taken aback by, about how absolutely professional your staff was. But then you got Nathan Strauss, Zach Lewis, some of the young crew. Talk about that chemistry and how did you make that work? Because I felt comfortable with those guys from minute one.
I mean, good people still matter in this world. I know maybe not when people look at value of a human being. Sometimes we get lost in the fact that being a good human being should have a higher weight to it. And I got lucky because, let me just talk about from the broadcast side and then I'll talk about from the player side. I got here and Adam Frenier, who's been doing something for UMass for the last 30 years, was here to do whatever we wanted and whatever he could. And so super fortunate to have him. He's one of my best friends in all the world. And it truly makes doing games so much better because he's a part of our team. And then I also got here and Frank Sullivan was here doing games. And so, being able to step in and talk with him and learn from his knowledge, I think one of the things I like to do is just listen. So I'll let Frank, if we're doing a game, I want him to be the guy that can break things down and talk more throughout the broadcast because he is an expert and has coached for so long. So, being a good human being and tying those other folks together, yourself included now, goes a long way. From the changing world side, I think one of the great things about being in my role here is that I get to know players and coaches, right? So, Coach Frank Martin is dear to me. Joe Simiak, our football coach, I work closely with him. He's been awesome. Mike Leffler, our women's basketball coach, on down the list. I kind of got a case of what I call the used tos. Used to be you had 4 years with a player, right? And you'd be able to develop such an amazing relationship and see that kid go from a freshman to a senior, not only on the court, but you would travel with the team, you eat breakfast with the team, you get to know them. And that's few and far between these days. Fortunately, entering this next season, we've got a guy, Jaden Jingay, who's a Massachusetts native, who's entering his 4th season here at UMass. And you can really develop a rapport with players. And now I think that's challenging for not only people in my position, but coaches, academic staff. I mean, you name it, it's a 10-month window for a lot of these kids. So you have to get them in, make them feel comfortable, and get to know them. And those relationships, I guess, don't run as deep because of the new system. And hopefully there's something on the horizon where, there is an enticement to keep kids in a school for, more years if they so choose to play more years for you. Because I do think that's lost also with the fans, the relationship that you have with your players on the court.
And going back to the chemistry thing, the team that you build is the team you play with. And so it's really important that you really build those good relationships and feel comfortable around everybody. I think that's one of the things that you've done extremely, extremely well. Pete, jump in.
Yeah, on the business side of broadcasting, how hard is it to keep a big announcing stable in a local broadcast setting? Because you're dealing with local stations. You're not really dealing with a huge network where you can, have the unlimited resources. How hard is it to keep a good crew?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. The industry doesn't pay anything until you get to a certain level. So it's tough, man. I mean, you got to find people that are dedicated. Fortunately, we found people that are, really about the right things and about UMass in general. We are also not a far drive from Boston, so there's, a larger pool of people, ESPN's down the road. So I feel like we're probably in a better position than most places where, take a look at, you mentioned Nathan Strauss, who's been here now I think he's got 2 degrees from UMass. We hired him years ago and he just won't leave. He's one of my best friends now and he loves this place. And so being able to develop some of that talent, we've got some kids that went to school here that are now part of our Learfield broadcast crew and ESPN Plus crews. So that certainly helps, but the hardest thing is, I think, when you get to a level and there's people that would be good at this, but they just can't do it financially because it's demanding. Take hockey, for instance. They play every Friday and Saturday from October to end of March.
Wow.
And you want to have 2 guys or 2 people do the broadcasts and be your 2 people, but it's so hard to find those. Unfortunately, we've had a guy in Donnie Morehouse who's been here for better part of 20 years be a part of that circle. So it's tough, man, and it can't be motivated financially, at least until you get to the top.
Yeah, and this market is really weird. I grew up here, so I'm same as you. I grew up in Springfield, and when I got into the market in the news business, I found out that this was a transitional market for all kinds of people, because of its geographic placement and its market size. Yeah. And I did more first live shots for more reporters in this market. I think it was like 14 of them over my 5 years
you can tell there's some young ones
at Channel 40. Like, they come out of the Midwest or right out of school. And then they're off to Hartford, they're off to New York, they're off to Boston from here. Is it easier to keep somebody that came through the program, like through UMass? Is it easier to keep them here, or is it?
Yeah, it's tough because, because there's
Even
only
like
one.
crew wise, like video crew. Are you
Yeah,
guys?
I mean, a lot of it's
student crew?
students.
Yeah.
So we're teaching, and there is, not only obviously the broadcast side, but just the athletic side in general, where people have one eye where their feet are and one eye on the horizon, right?
Yep.
I mean, that goes for players, coaches, staff. I mean, everywhere. And so when you find those places, and I'll put UMass in this category, but you go to a place like Virginia Tech or Alabama, there's people that would never consider leaving for any other place
Yep.
because that's the goal. And so for me, that's what I've got here because this is my backyard and my hometown.
Same here.
Yeah, but it's also hard because there's only one of me. There's no.
I feel this.
second-
I feel your
There you
pain.
go.
Because
just-
we have a media program here at the Westfield Technical Academy, right? We have high school students.
Yeah.
And Steve Forney is their teacher, but I'm the only technician, and I run the TV studio. I now run an FM broadcast station, a production truck. Hence the reason we were 10 minutes late starting taping today.
Yeah, and also like to especially in today's world where AI, all that nonsense, like people are getting rid of jobs, right? Like the local news reporter. I mean, look, when I was in Richmond, we had 3 ABC, CBS, and NBC. Each had a local affiliate.
Yep.
Each had a local sports reporter, and they would come to all of our games and they would shoot B-roll and they would do the story at the end of the night. I don't think a single one of those jobs exists now.
Correct. They don't.
Oddly enough, sports is the first one they cut, which seems silly to me because it's the one a lot of people pay attention to. But so those jobs dwindle and it becomes so difficult. You have to go, as I was saying earlier, you have to go to wherever the opportunity is.
Yep.
And sometimes that's not where you really want to go, but you have to if you want to do it.
Yep.
No doubt. There's always sacrifice involved. I saw that Miami of Ohio signed Steele through 2033 and 2034. But I did want to spend a little bit of the segment because I know you have a show that you do with Coach Martin called Being Frank. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoy the interaction that you have with Coach, and I have really, really enjoyed getting to know him as well also, because if you see Coach Martin from across the sidelines, you'll have one perception of him. But once you get to sit down next to him and be engaged with him as a human being in the seat next to him, you see that there's a little bit of a teddy bear wrapped up inside the toughness that he has as well too, and I love that about him because he's just, he loves those kids, he cares about them, and he's 100% right on their back always. And you can see that with his lineups, you can see that with the way he approaches young men. You can make a mistake with Frank Martin and he might give you some heat for it, but he's going to bring you back, and he's going to bring you back better than you were before. Let's talk about Coach just in that microscope, but then also talk about what being Frank is like and what are the challenges of that.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Frank Martin is our head basketball coach. He'll be going into his fifth
Yeah, it sounds about
season
right.
here?
Yeah.
I've lost track. And he's coach with Final Four pedigree, was at South Carolina for 10 years, before that Kansas State. The thing about him, and I feel like we have such a great rapport now, but you're right, there is an intimidation factor, especially when I first started doing shows with him and interviewing him. But he made a concerted effort, and I think he does this wherever he goes, to get to know people. And he did that right away with me. And, some coaches, they'll keep you at a distance, they'll keep you at an arm's length. Hey, we'll be cordial to you, but you're not part of the team, or you're just, someone that is a satellite auxiliary person for us. He doesn't do that. Everyone is part of his group and part of his team, and it's been an honor to get to know him and be in that inner circle, which is great. He is an old school coach, though, right? Like if you watch a practice, it's Bobby Knight-esque. He's very demanding of his players, and I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure that they know that, and he tells them that up front. And that's why they choose to play for him, is because they want to have the best brought out from them. So, him doing the show is getting another side of him sometimes. and I've gotten to the point where I can, I can throw a couple barbs at him to keep him honest, and but he loves people, and he loves just talking about the sport and about life, and I think that's what I've really enjoyed about being next to him is we'll go places, we'll go play in Florida or in South Carolina, and he'll have friends from high school that will show up and just be there to support him, and so I've gotten to know his crew as well. But I think that speaks to kind of the type of person that he is that when you've still got your buddies from way back when, and they've been with you all these years, that tells you something about someone's character.
I grew up in New York City, and I was fortunate. Yeah, and I was fortunate to, because I came out of a basketball factory where we were. If you couldn't make a layup with your left hand in third grade, you were dead. You were dead to everybody. So it was just one of those things. So I was fortunate. I made the varsity in ninth grade. And I'm starting on the varsity in New York City as a point guard in the ninth grade. Now, I can tell you honestly, I've had coaches go up and down me like a freight train. I've had coaches with their hands physically on me during halftime. And at no point did I ever enter into my own head that I was being abused. Yeah. At no point did it enter into my head that this guy doesn't have exactly what I need from him. I need him to take me outside of myself. I need him to make me better than I am, because I'm a human being who fall back and fall into the trap of being very satisfied very easily. You need people like that in your life. People miss that all the time. And when my coach was going up, down side of me one time, you know what I was saying to myself in my head? He's right. He's 100% right. Fix it. Turn it around. Make it better. And that's what the environment that I thrived in and loved, because that's, to me, that's the highest form of love. Anybody who wants to smoke, blow smoke in your direction and tell you this and tell you that, they're lying to you half the time. And everybody that will confront you and come to you and say, I want you to be great, that's the person you want to live with. That's the person that you want to be with. And I watch Frank Martin with his players, and I've seen what he's able to bring out and what he's able to bring to the table. And UMass is really, really fortunate to have a guy like that really, really has that passion and isn't afraid to show people his passion as well. I love that about him. Him.
Yeah, and I think kind of to just put up where you were saying at the beginning, where that's what you see on the court, right? And then behind the scenes or off the court, there's just so much more to who Frank is, and that, I think, is something that I feel like we've showcased, a lot of his personality in the Just Being Frank show. But just trying to say, hey, he's not one-dimensional, man.
No, he's not.
There is a demand for greatness from his players, and the proof is in the pudding, really, for the course of his career.
We're gonna work, and we're gonna get Coach Martin on the show, and I promise you, the first question I'm going to ask him is, how does it feel to know that your wife could drop you in a 100-yard dash tomorrow in a second?
Yeah, his wife Anya
was a former track star at UMass.
Star, yep.
Unbelievable. Great family. Great family.
Huge supporters of UMass even before he came to UMass. So we're look, super fortunate. I think they'd probably tell you, last year, they had some talent and didn't get it done. And I think there's a lot of expectations on what the team looks like this season. Bringing a lot of the players back from a year ago, adding a few big pieces in the transfer portal, and trying to navigate. For coaches, not just Frank, but guys that have been doing this, or coaches that have been doing this a very long time. Now I got to negotiate with agents, with people with contracts, some schools backloading contracts to get the upper hand. It's a whole new world, and it's a world that he's had to learn on the fly and navigate. And so, we'll see what the
we've talked a lot about the insanity of that world right now.
Well,
Yeah,
the
man,
pure
I mean,
insanity of it.
you know, we've had Ryan Bamford on here. We've
Yeah.
had Bob Beretta on here. We also had the president of St. Bonaventure, Jeff Gingerich. And what I've said to each one of those individuals, and I say this to everybody on the show, if you're in evaluation of a mid-major coach right now, you need to have two metrics that I need to hear about. Number one, what's his poach level? How many of his players have been absolutely just run out of there and taken at a higher level and paid more money? Okay, it would have been great if they had brought the young man back who wound up at either Oklahoma State, was it?
Jalen Curry. Yeah.
Jalen Curry. I mean, wouldn't have been, what would his team have looked like this year if he have him running the point? You know, and have Danny Carbuccio coming in there as a freshman and not being thrown into the fire. That changes everything. So I say to them, look at that dynamic as well. And then secondly, were you ready for the NIL? I say this to people at St. Bonaventure all the time in evaluation of anybody there. Were we ready for the NIL? We weren't. We weren't ready, and we weren't, you know, anywhere above a grade C, and have never been above that. So you have to evaluate on that as well too. You know, that whole thing's changed, but you got to change the way you evaluate these coaches, because mid-major coaches right now are under assault, absolutely under assault.
Yeah, and you know, director of athletics Ryan Bamford's probably the best person to speak to all these changes, because you know he actually gives us a great update every quarter about what's going on at the NCAA level and how things change academically from a financial standpoint. And what we don't know is how much players are getting paid by the schools. There's the budget of $20.5 million or whatever that number is, that is allotted by each school that they can pay the players. But those numbers aren't public. So that's a difficult thing to navigate too, is where you don't know. Someone might say they're going to be paying someone more, but you can't verify that and check it. I will say this though, Ed, this has been my kind of seeing this unfold live as we've been going through the last 6-7 years. The NCAA had decades to do something, and they didn't.
Yep.
Highly paid people across the board, and they keep losing in court and haven't been able to do anything to catch up. And now they're asking for a Hail Mary from Congress to put some guardrails in place. I think everybody, players included, would like some type of structure.
No doubt.
But we don't have it yet.
Ted Cruz would have been the absolute last guy I would have called.
Don't
Ted
Next
Cruz would have
question.
been the absolute last guy I called. Charlie Baker would have been the second to last guy that I would have called. And so that's where you're at right now. And you're,
I mean,
Pete and I right now are just laughing and shaking our head, because that was in the zone. Episode number 1, episode number 50, episode 100. We've been all over that territory, and unbelievable. But Jay, I wanna thank you for being with us, because we've held you over time already, and we got a few other things to get to.
Oh,
but
all right.
You
Okay.
are the
Anytime,
voice of
man.
the Minutemen, and we've
Come
had
down to
a
the studio
blast
sometime.
with you today, and we'll have to do this again real soon. Appreciate you,
Man.
brother.
Pete, thanks so much. Coach, thanks so much. You guys keep up the good
You're
work.
the
and,
absolute
we'll talk
best,
to you
my
soon.
man. You're
All
the
right.
absolute best. Stay there. Pete, the trifecta worked.
Yeah.
We pulled it off.
I got it squeezed. I got the triple box squeezed in.
Unbelievable.
We look like we're a real deal.
But right now, we're going to have to fly. We're going to have to fly to get the rest of this covered. What do we got here? So I'll go through it with you as best we can. And we'll say thank you to Jay, because that interview with that was great. And Pete, I was so glad that you came in on it, because you and him speak that same language, you know, and that was apparent during the interview. The questions you asked were right on point, and I thought he knocked them out of the park.
Yeah, he did.
You know, I thought he hit
He's a good guy.
hit a grand slam there. Yeah, he's just so affable and just such a really, really, you know, as he said, it's still a human quality, you know, and he possesses that. I that picked up on that from minute one when him and I first started talking about me going up there and doing a couple of games. It first started when they were still in the A10 and they were playing GW. And him and I had a conversation back and forth about maybe you'll stop by and talk to us about Chris, talk to us about his time at Westfield. And, you know, we never were able to pull that off. And then out of the blue, he contacted me again and he said, would you like to try this? And man, did I have a blast with those guys. But Frenier and and Sullivan and the rest of that crew up there, Zach Lewis, Nathan Strauss, those two young guys right there are going to be superstars in the business.
Well, and also by then you had 50, 60 shows under your belt too. When they approached you again, too.
And they noticed that. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's how I got to get up there, because they said, "Well, have you ever done anything like this before?" And I said, "Well, here's 60 shows you can watch." You know, so we sent them a couple of the really good ones, and you know, this is those two components that have been added into my life have just been such great added value. It's unbelievable. All right, so yesterday was the deadline for players to take their name out of the draft. They can go in as an underclassman. They can go to the combine, get evaluated, listen to the agents and the banter back and forth between the clubs who have general managers and the people who will be making the draft decisions. And the general managers try, I think, to be very honest with the players and say, okay, we have you at 30. You know, we have you in the second round. We have you here. We have you number one. You know, and all that dialogue goes back and forth, and that allows the players to make a decision. But what also this has brought to the table, and we'll talk about this guy, Momcilovic, who is an international player that played at Iowa State this year, put his name in. And at the very, very last minute last night, he takes his name out. And now he is the number one portal potty pirate target. That's who they're all going to go after. And guess what? They just added a few zeros, Pete. They added a few zeros. Yeah. Exactly, because he's smart. He's playing that leverage right now, and some of these guys had that leverage. The kid Tanner from Vanderbilt is going back. There's a couple that are going back, and there's a couple of that are staying in. Interesting dynamic in that whole thing is that the later you work, I think it is, you know, the better you can do. But then look at this also from a budgetary concern, all right? You got all your guys, and you got them lined up, but you don't have enough, right? But then Momcilovic says, I'm coming back, and I'm a free agent right now. I'm in the portal, and you guys start bidding on me, okay?
Out comes the dollars.
Big dollars. Everybody's going to be going back and forth. The agent's sitting in the middle laughing because his number just goes up every single phone call. Okay, but now you got the player in the middle, and they're saying, okay, I can now really run this up the flagpole and make this into something really, really good. So what it does for me, though, in my brain, it says that has to create budgetary concerns. And this is why I want the collective shut down, because I want them to live within that $22 million scope. I want them to have to live within that, not go, okay, we got $22 million, but now we got Avenue B where we go down and we talk to the guy who owns the chicken company and he gives us a boatload of money. Or we talk to the guy with the funny water company and he gives us a boatload of money.
So you're advocating for a salary cap?
I'm advocating, yes, for not necessarily a salary cap, but for them to live within the means and then to restore at least that accountability to it. Just like Jay was talking about, nobody knows. Nobody knows right now because of that plan B, that lane B that still exists out there. I'd like to see that change. All right, you got some interesting NBA free agents out there. We'll talk about them pre-draft because that's coming up soon. The draft is 24th and 25th. Pete is talking about doing a show from the Air Force Base on the 11th, I believe. Right, Pete?
We'll see, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see if we can pull that off, and then that would make us do our draft on the 18th back in the studio. So we'll set you up for that. Ayu Dosunmi from the Timberwolves is the number one free agent out there, but I don't believe he's the number one. Everybody says he's number one. Had a good year, but I'm a Jalen Doran guy who plays for the Pistons. Huge, big man inside, hard to find in the NBA. Solid, really, really great rebounder. He's a restricted free agent. Quentin Grimes, Walker Kessler, the Jazz better re-sign him. He's too good to let get away. And you can re-sign your own free agent for whatever you want. Austin Reeves from the Lakers. Keep an eye on that, Pete. That's a LeBron question, I think. Are they going to keep him or are they going to get rid of him? Mitchell Robinson from the Knicks. That scares me because he's a great backup for them. And Peyton Watson of the Nuggets. Okay, President Trump plans to attend the New York Knicks and whoever they play in the MSG, Madison Square Garden, in the finals. Oh, my God.
All right.
I can't believe, A, that the Secret Service would allow that to be put out. But man, oh man, is that going to be a security nightmare.
Do you believe in the Danhausen curse?
I do not. I've heard about
Come
it.
on.
I've heard about it. Yeah, I'm not.
When he uncursed the Knicks, they went on an 11-game winning streak.
I know. None of that means anything to me because
Jalen Brunson thinks so because when they asked him about it, he smirked.
Jalen Brunson was Eastern Conference Final MVP, so he can believe whatever he wants right now. Here's the Laker layoff for you, Pete. Over a dozen people in the front office from the Lakers let go on a reorg. This new management team they got there is not fooling around. They're all business. Pete,
but that means LeBron is going to walk away.
Please ask the because we're in a you could keep an eye on that for sure. But in the culinary aspect of this tech voc that we're in,
yes.
Please ask the students in the back next week to prepare a capon for me or a crow because I'm going to have to eat crow. Joe Mazzulla, NBA Coach of the Year. I hammered him. I gave him a beat down all year, and he's Coach of the Year. I got to take it. I got to eat the crow, Pete. Only 3 coaches got first and second place votes. Bickerstaff from the Pistons and Mitch Johnson from the Spurs are the only ones there. Redick and Dagnall. Dagnall, I don't know what that guy got to do to get some votes, but he did not get a first or second place vote. Koa Pete. He remains in the draft. Tanner's going back to Vandy. Manchalovic is into the portal again. And Graves, the big kid out of Santa Clara, Alan Graves, I'm high on him. I like him. Santa Clara, he's staying in. He's going to go in the NBA. Keep an eye on him. For me, 17 through 22. All right, Becky Hammon. Becky Hammon was a woman who was hired by the Spurs as an assistant coach. I believe to this date is the first woman ever to be an assistant coach in the NBA. Well, Becky Hammon took off a big bite of Jalen Brunson the other day, and now she's having to be questioned about it, and she's trying to back up her comments, okay? What she says is, you cannot win the NBA. You can't win in the NBA with a small guard. A shot at Jalen Brunson, Knicks guard, who is the Eastern Conference. I don't know if Becky saw the television, and saw that Eastern Conference Final MVP trophy. You know who Walt Frazier handed that to, Becky? Yes, sir, Jalen Brunson. Yes, sir, he's the best basketball player in the game right now, the way he's playing basketball. He is top 3 in the game right now, the way he's playing basketball. So, Becky, you should have jumped on and said, just like I did just a minute ago, I said, I'm going to eat some crow. I was wrong about Mazzulla, and I love that when I can do that. But, Becky, why didn't you do that? You had a chance. You made a comment. It wasn't very, very smart comment, and now you had a chance to jump off it right as the Knicks with the guy you said who couldn't do it just did it. She backed up her comments. I was shocked. A little bit of word to the people out there in the interview world. Stop calling Becky Hammon. All right, folks, we're in the NBA playoff scenario, and we're rolling. This is the biggest thing to hit New York since the Empire State Building, folks. The Knicks are back in the finals. There's Spike Lee is having to take out a second mortgage just to pay for his tickets. Unbelievable. They took the Cavaliers to the woodshed.
Yeah, they did.
They've taken everybody they've touched to the woodshed. This team is shooting the ball at a clip right now that if you say this is what you want your team to do, and this is really what it's going to come down to, the conversation has to center around this. Thibodeau brings them all the way up, and they missed going to the finals last year, but right one step shy of the finals, they get knocked out, but then they fired him. And the basketball world went, whoa. And then they brought in Mike Brown. And Mike Brown now has a rotation much deeper than what Thibodeau is doing, and their team looks fresher, shooting the ball at a clip like you have not seen in years.
Yeah.
And right now they're playing the best basketball I've seen any Knicks team play since 1969, Pete. I love it. Okay, Jalen Brunson was the MVP of the Eastern Conference Final. Lights out shooting from the whole team. A couple of weeks ago, they were talking about how terrible Mikal Bridges was. He's El Fuego now. All right, it's the best basketball I've seen him play. And it's the substituting pattern. They're getting guys fresh legs, and they're getting guys in and out of there. Their patterns go on time. All right, You're Jalen Brunson. They're taking him out at the end of the quarter. Why? Because if you sit him at the 10-minute mark, not only does he get to sit for 2 minutes of that time, but then he gets to sit through the whole television break as well, which is almost another 2 minutes. So now you're talking about 4 solid minutes of rest before they bring him back. Maybe even a little bit into the second quarter, but then they bring him back. But it's timed, it's organized, and it's well constructed and thought out. Let's talk about the Cavaliers for 1 minute, because they are now the Sealy Posturepedic spokespersons of the year, because they laid down better than anybody that's laid down in a long time. At the end of that series, they had absolutely quit. Kenny Atkinson's keeping his job, but I'm a little surprised at that. I don't think the management wanted to pile on him, but that team took an absolute dump in this series as far as performance.
That was essentially a beatdown.
It was a beatdown, and it was, here's
and
how
I'm
you know.
surprised because on the other side, OKC's having a tough fight.
Oh, that's a
You
battle
expected it to be the
royale.
other way, right? Yeah.
Knicks getting more rest.
Yeah.
They're getting more rest, which is good for them, and also it seems at least at this time they won't get what happened to them before, which was too much rest. They were off for almost 10 days in between the second and third series, which was a lot. And it showed in game 1 of the Cavaliers where they were down by 22 points, then clicked on and took them. I thought from that point on out, the Cavaliers just laid down. And when you watch the Knicks go to the offensive glass and rebound the ball with the tenacity that they did, and watch the Cavaliers just standing around, it was hard to watch actually as a coach, because they just gave up, if you ask me. And these guys get paid a lot of money. Donovan Mitchell's in his hometown in New York, man. At least he was fighting. But Pete, it comes down to what we've said a long time ago. It's hard to be Harden. Hard to be Harden. He was awful in this series. Absolutely awful in this series. And he holds the ball, and then kicks it away to the other team. It's a layup down the other side.
Hey, Coach, you can't convince me it wasn't about this.
You are guest.
No doubt. I think they were, they went fishing. I don't know that they're going to be too excited about giving up Darius Garland and all that youth for the guy that absolutely tanked it in the finals. I mean, he was awful. Thunder and the Spurs, Pete alluded to this earlier. This is a great series.
Yeah.
Really, really been good. San Antonio comes out in game 1, whack, sticks him with a jab right into the face, boom, boom, takes him out. OKC, that's what I'll give this team credit for.
You called this one, though. You said that San Antonio was going to give them a hard time.
They did all year long, and they're still doing it now. And one of the reasons is because of Wembanyama is just he's so fluid and unstoppable right now. Even Holmgren at 7'3" is having trouble with him. I mean, there's not that much big of a difference, but he's just that good, And the Spurs right now have a young team, but Stephen Castle is playing great basketball. Turning it over too much still. He had 9 turnovers the other night, but he had a good game in game 5, 24, 5, 6 assists. That's what I like about guys, and this is when we talk about our draft. There's this theory, and we'll talk about that slap later on, the slap theory, but Castle fits into that slap. Wembanyama was 4 for 15 and 0 for 5 from three-point range. The Thunder, 127, 114. Game 6 tonight. Game 6 tonight. So keep an eye on that one. Can the Spurs now at home extend the series, take it back to OKC for a Game 7, and keep it alive? Folks, I'm going to give it to you right here, right now. They can't. OKC is going to take them tonight. OKC in 6. It happens tonight. I'm giving you that in the zone right now. The reason I say that is the way that Game 5 went. They handled them in Game 5. They got their calibration back. Now, they're playing basically without Jay Will. He's been hurt. He's been out. But, SGA and Holmgren and a lot of these other guys, Caruso, the kid coming off the bench, has been absolutely fabulous in this series. So you're looking right now at Wembanyama and SGA being MVP of the Western Conference Finals. That's the youth movement in the NBA right now. That's where the youth is at. Okay, Pete, we have the draft that's approaching. Couple of stories in that draft that are unbelievable, but this is one of the things that I like to bring. And Pete, just give me an idea of how much time I got. I think I got about 6 or 7 minutes.
Sounds about right. Yep.
Okay, because we got off a little bit on the other side of the midnight clock today, so I just want to make sure I don't get lost.
Yep.
Okay. So what I have for you today is my RSS official ratings. All right, and this is a rating that I do based upon climbing into every single player that I consider to be in the first and second round, and then a few that I'm looking at and evaluating and seeing. So we're looking at maybe a cohort of about 70 players. And what I do is I assign them an RSS score. Not anything complicated, doesn't have all those efficiencies and all that other stuff built into it. It's just a simple formula where I take the number of points they scored, the number of rebounds they have, and the number of assists. Those are the three categories that determine a basketball player for me. I like steals, I like blocks, but I'm a money ball guy when it comes to basketball, and I'll explain that to you. I want my players to shoot above 45% from the floor.
Okay.
I want them to shoot above 38% from three-point range, and I want them to shoot above 75% from the free throw line. If you can't do that, at some point you're a liability. At some point you're a liability. You watched it with Shaquille O'Neal in his career. How many more points would he have scored if he was just 10 points higher as a free throw shooter? Probably was in the 50s somewhere. Imagine him being a 75% free throw shooter and how many additional points that would have brought in, how many additional wins, how many additional championships possibly. So that's why we kind of add that together. And basically, we take a look at two other components. The two other components are their ability to shoot the three ball and their ability to shoot free throws. Because either one of those things in the NBA right now that don't match up and they're liabilities. Okay, if you can't shoot free throws, I looked at some of these guys with their free throws attempts and their scoring and their ability, and I dropped them on my board because you can't shoot 50% from the free throw line and be a successful NBA player, in my opinion. At least on a franchise that I would want, you know. And so the other piece of it is you're going to look at their free throw shooting and their 3-point shooting, because the NBA is so 3-point driven. 3-point shooting is now a premium. And then you look at the other side of it, free throws, everybody's going to get fouled. You don't know who's going to get fouled at the end of the game. You better have a team free throw average in the 70s, somewhere in the 70s, or you're going to lose games because those guys miss. You're going to watch guys go to the line at the end of the game, miss two. It's going to crush your whole team. Boozer. There he is, Pete. Cam Boozer is my number one. Now, this does not mean I'm going to pick him number one. It means he rated out highest in my scoring system. Now, you could have a guy who rates out really, really crazy, but he plays at Siena. I'm not going to consider him to be as good as Cam Boozer just because he has a 37 on his rating. We didn't look at a lot of those guys that weren't in the mix, okay? So the guys that we considered, and some of these are in the proper order. Some of them I have not numerically ordered as well, but we're pretty close, okay? Number two, Boozer's score was 36.8, Pete. 36.8. Pretty good score. This is how we got to Zach Edey, folks, at number one. And we're standing on Zach Edey as number one, way, way into it. This young man can get healthy. He's going to be a star in the NBA. Absolute. DeBonta, number two, 36.0. Darius Acuff, this young man shoots 44% from three-point range. He's a 6'2" guard, but I'm going to keep him up there because of his ability to score the basketball and shoot the basketball from deep. 44% is like top 3 number in the whole draft. So we got to keep an eye on Darius Acuff. Caleb Wilson, 31.9. I'm very high on Caleb Wilson. I'm very high on Yaxel Lenderborg. All right, so you got Steinbach, 31.9. The big kid, Hans Steinbach, 31.9. Okori out of Stanford. This is what people don't know what to do, because when you say slap, here's what we mean about slap. But I'm more of a slab guy, okay? And let me talk to you about that. Slap means size, length, athleticism, and physicality. That's how you rate an NBA player. What's his size? What's his length? His size, you look at Zubi Ejiofor. He went into the combine at 6'10". He came out at 6'7.5". That's going to kill his draft potential because he's not a center anymore. Can't play center. So you're going to see some of that happen as well. But again, you go into all of these measurements and all this other stuff. So you go slap and then you go physicality. I'm a slab guy. Okay, slab is I like size, I like length, I want athleticism. That's the NBA game. Okay, but I also want a baller. I want to know somebody that can ball. Walter Clayton isn't going to show up in SLNA, but he shows up in B. He's a slab guy. He's going to be a baller, all right? That's the kind of guys that I want on my team, all right? Okori is a baller. I don't know where you're going to find him, but I'm going to find him somewhere in the first round. Another guy, Martinelli, 31.2 out of Northwestern. Nobody knows what to do. Watch OKC draft him. Anderson, 29.5 out of Texas Tech. Jefferson, I'm high on him, 28.6. Swain, I'm high on him, 28.4. You got Thornton from Ohio State. You got Hall, Keyshawn Hall from Auburn, 29. Graham Ike is a 30. I like Graham Ike, folks. Cameron Carr out of Baylor. Baylor produces pros. Keep an eye on him. All right, Henry Visar and Zuby is down in the 16th spot, although I don't even have Zuby most likely in my first round. All right, we're going to come back to you next week. More NBA draft coverage, but we're telling you right now, we're going to be on June 18th for the draft, and we're going to knock it right out of the park. I think this year we're going to send it to every single general manager in the NBA and let them have a view of what it's like to be in the zone. They can draft better players that way. Pete, great interview today with the great voice of UMass, Jay Burnham, and also Back in the Zone with Pete. We'll see you next week. Have a great, great summer, folks, the start of summer, and enjoy this weather that's warming up. We'll see you next week in the Zone.